Okay. All right. Well, all right. So first off, thanks for coming, and sorry for the technical issues. As you can see, um, although giving an presentation on interviews may be my strong suit, Discord is not. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Tony, and I'm the secretary of the e-board. And so if you're just arriving, I have a link in the workshop text channel, and we're using it to take attendance, and it's also going to ask you which group you'd like to be in for the coding practice. So if you haven't filled that out yet, if you could, that'd be great. So we're just going to go over what we're going to do today. Actually, can you switch slides? All right. So here's what we're doing. So this introduction is just going to be like a few minutes, and then the bulk of the workshop is going to be in the coding interview practice. And we're also going to go over some other things in the conclusion as well. So there will be valuable information after the coding portion. If you wanna stick around for that, that'd be great, and we totally recommend you to. But if you have something to do, then you're welcome to leave. But all right, so switch slides. So some of you might be wondering what a coding. Oh no, no. There you go. So some of you might be wondering what a coding interview is, especially if you're a freshman. Um, and this might be like the first time you're applying to internships. And switch slides. So typically a coding interview is done in person on a whiteboard. It can be virtual sometimes, and a lot of companies are kind of shifting over towards a virtual format, especially now because of the pandemic. But all in all, there's going to be a core concept. You have to solve a coding challenge without the help of an IDE or using the internet. And in some cases, you will have multiple rounds, depending on the company you apply for. So if you're kind of applying for like a more of a local, smaller company, it might just be one or two rounds of a coding interview. But if you're applying to somewhere like Amazon or Facebook or Netflix, they are going to want you to go through several rounds, like 5 rounds, and with different interviewers. And depending on where you apply, companies are going to look for optimization in your solution, while others are just going to see if you can solve it. And you can go to the next slide. So you might be wondering, who cares about coding interviews, or why we're even practicing them, or what's the hype? They're very common. So pretty much if you're in computer science and you're going for a software engineering position, you're more than likely going to run into a coding interview. And they usually test your knowledge about algorithms and data structures, and they're kind of infamous though. And that's because they kind of challenge CS trivia or riddles, depending on the challenge and who's interviewing you, and the company you're applying for. And people get really anxious about them. And like all tests, they are kind of flawed because they don't really test all the skills you're going to need on the job, like how productive you are or how you work or how well you work on a team. Also, it is kind of an unrealistic expectation to not let the interviewee use a debugger or not use the internet. And you can also get a really good interviewer or a really bad one. So a lot of times it's a crapshoot. Um, they do reward preparation, and you really have to prepare for these so that you don't like mess up. But they are kind of flawed. And you can go to the next slide. So with that out of the way, we're going to get into the coding portion. And so I'm going to take a quick look at the surveys here. So we're going to spread you out into different groups. Okay, we have 13 responses now. Awesome. So if you, I'll let you know where to go. So the e-board is going to go into the voice channels that we have for the workshop. So we only have 2 people who are doing the beginner questions. And so Connor Walsh is going to be helping with the interview or the beginner questions. So if all the beginners could go into the beginner questions voice channel with Connor Walsh, that'd be perfect. All right. And so we have 7 intermediate, responses. So actually, we're going to skip that for now. So we have 4 advanced responses. So I'm going to be one of the moderators for the advanced questions. And so if saying Carolyn is also going to be helping out with that. So if you answered, so actually I'm going to have Carolyn go into one of the advanced question groups. Awesome. So if 2 people could join Carolyn, that'd be great. And it can be, it doesn't matter who it is. Awesome. All right, so 2 are in there. And then if 2 people could go into the advanced question groups, and I'm gonna go in there, or you can just wait for me. All right, so then for the intermediate questions, we're gonna be having Robin and Joshua and James cover that. So if Robin, Josh, and James could go into 1. So actually, if Robin, can you go into voice channel 1, and then James in 2, and Josh in 3? Okay. All right, sounds good. So we'll do two groups of 2 and then 1 group of 3. And it looks like we have 2 in intermediate 1. So if 2 people can go into with Joshua Cho in intermediate questions 3. Okay. No, just 1 more. Awesome. All right, so then the 3 remaining can go into intermediate questions 2 or just wait for James. What's that? Oh, okay. All right. Hey, Carter. Um, did you have a chance to fill out the survey? What's that? I couldn't hear you. And you can, if you want, you can type in the workshop text. So basically, we're splitting up by skill level, and so we're gonna, if you feel like you want to do beginner questions, then you can go into the beginner questions voice channel. If you want to do intermediate questions, so think like if you took like ICSI 213, which is data structures, you can go into any of the intermediate questions voice channels. And if you want to do advanced questions, then you can go into advanced questions 1. Which one? Beginner? Awesome. All right. Yeah, so that'll be with Connor Walsh. Yeah, so yeah, you can just go in there. Awesome. All right, cool. Indeed. So I think I can share my screen now. I believe I can start sharing my screen. All right. Can you all see my screen? Beautiful. All right. All right. So all right, this is what happened. So I upgraded my Mac to Catalina, and it changed all the security settings. So I had to tell my settings to actually let Discord record my screen, and that's why it wasn't working. But it works now. All right. So, all right. So good job, everybody, for coming to the coding portion, and I hope you learned something. Um, and so I think it's only suiting that we talk about what we should go or what we should do from here now that we've had this good time to practice. And so basically, can you all see the next slide? Beautiful. All right. So just keep in mind that coding interviews are only one piece of the puzzle. And so if we had more time, we would have liked to go over behavioral questions because that plays a big part in interviews. And just keep in mind that coding interviews are relevant, but companies are kind of realizing that they're not like the end all be all determining factor of whether you should get the job or not. Because they are very anxiety inducing, like when you're actually taking the interview, and um, they can be a little bit trivia based. And so that's why some technical interviews are going to ask questions about architecture or like how you want to organize your code or like object-oriented design, or they might ask you questions about some technical issue you had in the past, and they might want you to describe it. And what's also cool is that some companies are actually giving you take-home tests or like quizzes, and you have some time to work on it, and then you have to send it back in. And then there's also Codewars or CodePad or Leetcode, and some of you had time to practice that today. But what's nice about those is that you can use test cases to see if your code actually works. You don't have to kind of take a leap of faith when you're doing the coding interview. So my word of wisdom would be just, whoops, do not discount the behavioral portion. And I really want you to take that away out of this. And I know we put a lot of emphasis on the coding portion right today, but uh, make sure you prepare as equally for the behavioral portion. And that's because companies are really concerned about company culture and how you're going to interact with the team. And if you're a genius, but you have no chemistry with the team or you can't get along with the team, then what's the point of hiring you? Your interpersonal skills are going to be just as important. And company culture is especially important in the tech industry. I mean, look at like Google or Facebook. Um, if you know anything about them, like Google, you can literally sleep at while you're at work, and they have like Google tries to make it so that you never want to leave. Like they have food for you, and they have um, like stuff for you to wash your clothes and stuff. But not that that's really company culture, but just keep that in mind. Um, so here is some behavioral questions that I practice. But these are really only a sliver of what you should be practicing. And when you look at the behavioral questions, there's usually some sort of hidden question underneath them that they're really trying to ask. For example, if they're asking you if you enjoy working better alone or on a team, they really want to know if you can look at the bigger picture and realize that both are just as important. Um, they're looking for flexibility and that you can see that it takes all the pieces to make the puzzle. I would say it's just important to be genuine when you're answering the behavioral questions, and you're really going to get your best answers with experience in the industry or from your personal life. So your answers will come with time, but you should practice them just as much as the coding portion. And yeah, so you can speak about anything in your life. Well, so ideally they want you to talk about something um in your job experience. But I mean, they know if you're applying for an internship or if you're a fresh grad, they're not really going to expect you to have all of that job experience. So like something that I like to talk about when if somebody asks me about a time I failed was like if you do really poorly on a test and then how did you rebound from that? Or or like something like that. Like you can speak to your academics as well. Um, they something you could talk about is like working on a project like for a school and you tried something but it didn't work out or something. But they want a genuine answer. They don't want you to say like, "Oh, I never fail." That's like a really bad answer. So, did that answer your question? Okay, awesome. All right, so moving on. Whoops, moving on. So we're going to talk about our goals for a little bit. So all of these are kind of extrinsic and intrinsic goals. It's important to talk about your goals so that you can prepare for them and kind of realize them a little bit better. So in the tech industry, we put a lot of value on working for a FAANG company. And so if anybody doesn't know what a FAANG company, it's an acronym that stands for Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. So basically just like a big tech company. And so we put a lot of value on working for a FAANG company, working for a mission-driven company, and earning a very large salary. That isn't everybody's goal though, and a lot of people who get jobs at a FAANG company realize it's not for them. So I would recommend just thinking about how you want to measure your own success and what your own extrinsic and intrinsic goals are. And so at the bottom here, I do list some possible avenues that you could go through with computer science. So it's good to start thinking about whether or not you want to do iOS or like game development or software engineering or data science. And it's because depending on what you interview for, the context of the coding questions are going to be different. Behavioral questions are going to be kind of similar across the board, but the coding questions are like technical questions or something that you're going to want to have to cater towards them. And so it's good to think about how you're going to realize your goals. So if we go back, some people might want to become rich and famous. And so for some people, that means working at a FAANG company. So being rich and famous isn't all that for some people. Some people want personal growth or doing something that helps people or being genuinely happy, improving society. And you could argue that you can do that a lot of that at a FAANG company. If you work for a FAANG company, let's say like Facebook, there are people that use the product every day. So you can be making an impact in somebody's life, and that's meaningful to some people. And also working for a FAANG company, FAANG companies hire very smart people. And for some people, working at a FAANG company means that you spend a lot of hard work and that you're very passionate about computer science. So for some people, that's what's important about working for a FAANG company. But these are kind of just different things. But so talking about the goals are relevant, like I said before, because they're going to put more context into the coding interviews, what you have to study for, what you have to plan for. And so you can kind of think about like a small tech company versus a big tech company. A small tech company is just going to want to know that you can solve the issue. Whereas you go to a big tech company like Amazon, they're going to want to see optimization. And then you're also going to have to go through like 5 other rounds and with 5 other interviewers probably, or something ridiculous like that. So you're going to have to prepare more for like something like Amazon than you are for like a local tech company. Like, I don't know if any of you are familiar with something called like the Janelle Group in Schenectady or Commerce Hub in Albany or like CDPHP. Those are kind of more local tech companies for you, Albany. And so I'm kind of assuming that all of you, since you're all CS, I'm assuming you're all CS. I'm assuming you want to all get a job at a tech company. So in the next few slides, I've catered a few resources for you to kind of help prepare. And so right here are just kind of general UAlbany resources. So so we're gonna have a link to the presentation afterwards, but if you click right here, this is gonna bring you to some like general resources that anybody at UAlbany can use, but Handshake and UCAN are some that I really recommend. So UCAN is a platform where you can actually connect with UAlbany alums, and some of them work at big tech companies like Microsoft. Some work at smaller ones like the Janelle Group, and it's a great resource because you can connect with somebody that works at that company, and they'll give you mock interviews or resume critique. So you could literally use this platform to get a mock interview with somebody at Microsoft, if that's your dream. And Handshake is also really useful. If none of you have signed up for that yet, I would totally recommend it. But it's basically just like a job portal that helps you find internships and jobs. So next we have Leetcode and Codewars. And so some of you already got exposure to that, but these are really important if you plan on applying for like a big tech company. They're also important if you apply for smaller tech companies, but they have lots of questions that are just going to test your algorithms and data structure skills, kind of like what we were doing earlier today. And they're just good practice. And they have different questions like trees and stacks and strings. So the difficulty ranges, but definitely check those out. And then right here, we have some more. So these are going to be good networking tools and then good ways to find jobs to apply to. And so LinkedIn is definitely, I would definitely recommend LinkedIn. It's all about building your online profile. So if you were at James' workshop 2 weeks ago, and you want to keep building your online profile, definitely make a LinkedIn. Indeed is great. So that Indeed is going to be a platform that's just going to make it easier to find jobs. It's going to be pretty similar to Handshake, but Glassdoor is kind of like in the same vein as Indeed and Handshake, but it's another option. What's nice about Glassdoor is that you can get reviews from other users about certain companies, and users will also post like, hey, at this job interview, they asked me this question. So you can see what these companies are asking, and then that'll help you prepare. And then, so this link from Hacker News is just a link with people who are looking to hire people. So it's just going to help you find jobs. And then apply.fyi is kind of like Handshake, but it's just going to give you a list of like jobs that you're looking for. And so I have some interesting advice here. So I would just keep in mind that all this is just coming from one person and one person's experiences. And as Uncle Iroh said in Avatar: The Last Airbender, it is important to draw wisdom from different places. If you take it from only one place, it becomes rigid and stale. So I would say just go out there and try to find all the information you can about interviews and getting jobs and how to apply. I would definitely. So this is whoops. I didn't want to do that. So right here is a link to a YouTube video about somebody's experience applying to top tech companies. And then right here is a link to Reddit about some useful information. But I would definitely recommend checking those out. And my other advice is that companies only, what's up? No. All right. We have 12 viewers. All right. So the one at the top is a YouTube video, and then the one in the middle is a Reddit link, but check those out. So companies are also only going to interview applicants, so don't expect to get like interviews just out of nowhere. So you actually have to go out and apply. But just don't even worry about applying, or like don't even worry about the failure of not getting a job, because each failure is going to be a valuable data point and it's going to give you good experience for the next. And honestly, I would say the hardest part about getting a job is getting the interview. And having experience really helps, but it's definitely the hardest part. Just don't be afraid to reach out to recruiters. Don't be afraid of failure either. And then I just have one last quote for you. Oops, I am botching it. So luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. And so I think this is a fitting quote because you have to prepare for the coding interview. If you don't put effort into preparing for an interview, once you actually get the interview, you're going to be rushing to make sure that you do a good job. But consistent preparation is going to be your best friend when you're applying for jobs, because that's how you're going to be most prepared for when you actually get the interview. And I would recommend doing something like this, like what we did every day. Well, not necessarily every day, but maybe a couple days a week, getting with a group of friends and practicing coding interview questions. Especially if you're interested in a top tech company. Um, but yeah, I would just keep that in the back of your mind. And honestly, that would be like a that could be a club in and of itself. Um, if anybody wants, yeah. So yeah, and with that, that's the end of my presentation. Um, so I hope there's some wisdom imparted.